chamber presentation.
Yeah, we're wearing Chelsea shirts, so.
Nice. Yes.
The hour is 7 p.m. having arrived. I will call to order this regular meeting of Keene City Council. The meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. The video is also streamed on the city's website and posted to the website by the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. If you'd like to receive an electronic city council packet to reference during the future broadcasts, you can email the city clerk's office or contact the city clerk's office during regular business hours, or go to the website and subscribe to the city meetings email list. The agenda is also accessible from any mobile device. We ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Brian J. Lake.
Here.
Michael J. Remy.
Here.
Gladys Johnson. Michael Giacomo.
Here.
Randy L. Filio.
Here.
Robert C. Williams.
Here.
Philip M. Jones.
I'm here.
Andrew M. Madison.
Here.
Chrissy Roberts. Raleigh C. Umarad.
Here.
Bettina H.
Here.
Hadborn. Catherine I. Workman. Mitchell H. Greenwald. Kate M. Mosley.
Here.
Thomas F. Powers.
Here. Thank you. Councilor Mosley, would you please lead us in the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just a couple of announcements. On February 21st, we will have a second informational meeting on the downtown infrastructure project. This will be at Keene High School's auditorium. And at this meeting, the city staff and the city's consultant will do a presentation on the project and some of the feedback that we've received. And then following the presentation, the public will be invited to ask questions and receive answers from those experts. Microphones will be provided, and folks will be able to go up and testify and say what they want to say. I'm looking forward to seeing all the counselors there. I hope you'll all attend like we did the first time. There are going to be some seats in the front row set aside for you all and myself to continue to listen. And on Wednesday, March 1st, we've got our annual legislative delegation meeting, and that'll be held here at 6 p.m. I encourage you to come to that too, especially Phil. But hopefully we get a good turnout from our legislative delegation. It's a good opportunity to sort of network with them, talk to them about issues, and it's been valuable in the past. Finally, as required by our rules of order, the city clerks put on your desk a paper version of the annual statement of interest form, and I'd ask that you complete it. Anyone who hasn't submitted one yet, complete the paper version and give it to the city clerk. And with that, I would be looking for a motion on the minutes from Councilor Powers, a second by Councilor Mosley, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Move to accept the minutes from the February 2nd, 2023 regular meeting as printed.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilor Powers, seconded by Councilor Mosley. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? All those in favor? Opposed? That is unanimous. And we have Julie Chazelle from the Keene Peterborough Chamber is here to give us a presentation and an update on the branding project that they've undertaken and some exciting news about where they're taking that initiative. And welcome, Julie. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Am I good to go? Okay. Can you see it? All right, there we go. How do I get it? It's always in a... No, is there a way to get it in present mode? I mean, it's not a big deal, but I'm just trying to find the present. That one?
Yeah, the right here slideshow. So you can cancel and then hit
You guys do it?
yeah, there we go. And then go through, you just hit this button. Okay.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. Much appreciated. I will go quickly because I know you're busy, and some of you actually just saw this 2 days ago. So I hope it's even better this time. So I work at the Chamber, and I am the project manager of the Promoting the Region initiative. As you all know from the last presentation, we hired a consulting firm, a place branding consulting firm called North Star, who began working with us in October of 2020, officially, they came out for a visit. They met with many of you. They toured over 250 miles. They met with over 200 people. Place branding is what they do. They've been doing it for over 20 years. They've done it for over 300 communities, some of them as big as New Orleans, and some of them small like ours. So this is a shared presentation. I'm going to talk to you about how we uncovered the brand, right? So we spent almost a year working on deciding what the brand would be, and the process moved from research to strategy to creativity to action. So to give you some numbers, I mentioned the tour. There was also an online survey that was up for about a month and a half, and we had 858 respondents to the survey. It's the largest number of respondents they've seen, the second largest in 10 years. I described this region to them initially. I was like, it's very engaged. It's almost weirdly engaged, but it's a very engaged community, and they completely agreed. Keene, it was proportional, the respondents, to the population, obviously. So Keene had the largest number of respondents, and then Peterborough, and then so on. But we got responses from every single town in Cheshire County, which was awesome. And then some cold calling to people who live around the region, outside of it, and to see what their thoughts were. And then there was also a survey that was conducted early in 2020. And so with that, there was over 2,000 unique inputs for the research. So they take the research and they come up with what they call the DNA platform statement. And it is a storyline that establishes the Monadnock region DNA, right? It's what we use to build the marketing. For maximum brand impact, all communications and actions, including the logo and tagline, will literally and symbolically support its essence. So I will read to you the DNA statement that we came up with North Star. For those drawn to the natural beauty and energy of the outdoors, the Monadnock region in the scenic southwest corner of New Hampshire is remote but not removed and inspires the independence to follow your own path without having to stand alone, where you are free to make the best of every day. So quickly going through this, there was a lot of discussion around every single one of these words, believe it or not, and you'll never see this fully out in a marketing campaign. It's too many words, right? Like, that would be terrible. But what you will see is the essence of it in an image, in the language we do use. So like outdoors, we didn't want to use great outdoors because this isn't like extreme outdoor area, right? It's more moderate. Like, you could go hike Mount Monadnock in the morning, but we always say then you could be having Prosecco at Luca's later that night. And so it's kind of the two worlds of culture and outdoors. And then we logistically have to sort of acknowledge that we're in New Hampshire, in the southwest corner of New Hampshire. And we want to drive that message home because a lot of people aren't familiar with the word Monadnock or the Monadnock region. Not everyone's a hiker. And remote but not removed. We are a rural area, but it's not what a lot of people would think of with rural, right? We have this vibrant city here and then all these collections of really charming towns that surround us. And you can follow your independence here. We feel that that's a very strong part of our identity. And then where you can make the best of every day. You're not living for the weekend here. You can get out at 5, go for a bike ride on the rail trail, have some beers at Modest Man. It's a really strong quality of life. So here we have the logo and the tagline. We have New Hampshire's Monadnock region, within thriving distance. So resting in the K there is the icon. You'll see the fall colors that I think a lot of people associate with New England and this part of the world. You'll see the mountain, and you'll see blue, which is for lakes. We joke all the time that we would be the lakes region if there wasn't already a lakes region. And you'll see that arrow above the mountain, which is really to look modern, but then also drive home that there's some energy here. We wanted this to really seem clean, modern, vibrant, and then within thriving distance. So this is, our whole marketing campaign is really gonna be to people who live within a couple hours of the region, that you could drive here. And we wanted to really drive home the thriving element of our area, which again, I think when some people think rural, they might not always come up with that word. And so that's what we're really trying to drive home. And it's obviously a little play on words. So this is an example of how we could use the logo and the tagline. We have not bought a billboard. We would love to, but we have not done that. But I think it really drives home how to use the logo and the tagline. So just imagine this on 91, right? You're within thriving distance, New Hampshire's Monadnock region. It's a great visual that I feel sells what we're doing here. So these are some actual ad examples. These are hot off the press. We just made these this week. And we are launching an advertising campaign within the next couple of weeks. So this first one is for Visit. I'm not going to read you all the copy, but these are social media ads. So try to think of the way you see an ad on Facebook or on Instagram. There's like a very specific structure to how these look. But the idea is a glorious getaway is within thriving distance. And the copy on that one is, it literally drives that home. It says less than 2 hours away, the Monadnock region is sure to have something for you. So this ad is going to appear to people who live within 2 hours from here. New Haven, Worcester, little pockets that we feel like have people that would really be interested in coming here but might not know about it. On the right, you'll see an ad for Live. And one of the themes that we're trying to drive home with this quality of life is this family vacation or just a Tuesday. In the Monadnock region, it's hard to tell, right? Because the quality of life here is so good. You know, this kid, she gets home from school, she hits the rail trail with her family. You know, it's a really excellent place to live. Next, we have work. So we have that visual of the mountain, and it says here, every job comes with amazing perks, just step outside. So really trying to drive home what's different about us. And, you know, it's a beautiful commute. It's just beauty everywhere. I think that, you know, I come from the internet world in a major city, and for a long time there was all like these silly perks that you got at work, like you could play ping pong or whatever, but then you would have to stay late. And as people like kind of got accustomed to this, they realized that, like, these aren't actually perks exactly. So I'm getting into the philosophical thinking here. And one of the reasons I really wanted to come here is because I wanted to be outside with my kids, and I wanted to enjoy my life and not get like sucked into a game of ping pong at work for an hour. So trying to drive home a different kind of perks, right? Like the perks here are real. Just step outside, be with your family. And then for work, we have, that's Tim Pip, and we're gonna have like experts and locals talking about why they love working here. Here we're doing a little play on the word Monadnock, right? Trying to get locals' attention. Really wanted to show that we're local, so we're saying, you know, hard to say, easy to love. If you can say Monadnock, we want to hear from you, because if you've ever brought anyone from out of town, you know they have a hard time saying Monadnock. These are, again, just ideas. This is a visual, like a stand that would appear. I mean, imagine something like this at the base of Mount Monadnock, where they're getting thousands of people every year, and they're taking photos and tagging us, and it's a really great way to generate some social media, wayfinding signs on the right there. Social media, which has launched, I hope you'll follow us. Our website is launched too. It's monadnocknh.com. And on the right there is what we're calling the Thrive Guide. It's the Monadnock Regional Guide, but we're renaming it. It'll still have New Hampshire's Monadnock Region and Drive Home, where we are on a map. But what's really exciting about this is that this year we're publishing it with Yankee, and Yankee's going to write an editorial about why they're here. They're in the Monadnock region, and then they'll also distribute it electronically to their subscribers. So it's a fantastic way to get the word out. Here we have some more wayfinding signs. You know, we hope within the couple of years that we are getting towns to adopt these signs. We think it would be awesome if you're driving through any of the entry points to the region and you see these signs and you just get a sense of, wow, these towns, they are united. This is a really robust community here that supports each other. So that's what we're hoping. Here we have some swag. Those are Monad socks down on the lower left, which will be out soon, coming from Ted's. We have the beanies on our website. You can link to a shop and get some good stuff. And I will leave these very expensive stickers here for you guys. You're welcome to take some. And then now I'll talk about the growth strategy. So the first year, 2-year focus will be on visitor attraction and new resident workforce recruitment with a sort of residual impact on higher education institutions. After that, we hope to attract more businesses here, but we want to address sort of the workforce issue first. Our target audience, this is here you see it on the map, 28 to 45 years old, new and soon-to-be families seeking a higher quality, more family-friendly getaway lifestyle. And I'll talk a little bit about the marketing strategy. So if you go to the website, you'll see immediately on the homepage, there's what we call the 4 pillars. It's visit here, live here, work here, learn here. And we're gonna really try to cross-pollinate all of those as much as possible. So, you know, I'm trying to work with inns and hotels so that while a guest is here, maybe they get an email from the inn that's like, hey, are you enjoying your stay? Have you opened up Zillow yet? You know, are you curious about what it's like to live here? Check out this website. And really just trying to drive home that, you know, beyond just the visit, what it's like to be here. So we'll test media in Hartford, New Haven, Hartford and New Haven, Connecticut, Worcester, Mass, and then Manchester for the workforce as well. We feel like people could commute. It's not, you know, unheard of. And then we'll get the results from those, and then we'll sort of build the media buying upon that. So this is in process. We have a $70,000 digital advertising campaign that we're launching with Communicators Group. I won't get into the very specifics, but some ideas will be, you know, your basic online advertising, email marketing campaigns. We've done some podcast ads. We're going to do some video ads on Hulu and Peacock, and Netflix is apparently launching an ad subscription model. And then we're going to do local advertising too. We just want locals to be as behind this as we are. So Keene Sentinel, the Ledger, the Colonial too. The Thrive Guide, which I talked about earlier, working with local employers. I've met with a number of large employers who we're already working on ways to drive people to the website so the website can do the selling part of the region that they're sort of struggling with when they're trying to recruit someone who doesn't live here. You know, we hope to sort of build upon that, right? Like, it would be great if we had maybe a person that was really just dedicated to that, and that's something that we're thinking of long-term, working with the employers, and, you know, someone that a potential employee could even meet with that's not affiliated with the business, so that's more of an honest, you know, this is what it's really like to live here, and I'm not going to talk to you about working here the whole time. So little things like that. And we've been talking to Keene State and Franklin Pierce, talking about how they market, right? You know, that's not my specialty, and it was really interesting to hear that there's a lot of marketing to parents, you know, almost more than what they do for kids, and guidance counselors, and, you know, how can we work together to help support what they're trying to do. And enhanced effort to convert students that are here to residents and, of course, local employees. We continue to fundraise. We received the EDA grant in 2021. We received ARPA funds from Cheshire County in 2022. We've received 3 rounds of JPP, which is from the Division of Tourism, from the New Hampshire Division of Tourism, covering more than $50,000 in costs. And we've been invited to apply for additional ARPA funds from Hillsborough County, which is extremely exciting. And we continue to meet regularly with potential donors. And that is it. You can contact me there or Luca. And I'm sure there's other information about how to contact me as well. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome.
Are there any burning questions? Yes, Councilor Omran?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to commend you. This is one of the best efforts I've seen because you looked at who you wanted to attract and what you wanted them to do here. This isn't just patting ourselves on the back. This is really targeted, so thank you. My question on the logo is, what does the boomerang on the top of the mountain mean? I missed that one.
Oh, that's okay. So it's really, we consider it an arrow, and it was used in some of the wayfinding signs too, alone, to sort of point people, and we'll use it throughout imagery that way as well. But it's really to sort of give the sense of momentum. It's sort of the artistic element of the piece, but to be you have upward mobility here. It's really to establish, I think, I wanted to move here for a long time, for 10 years, but I, used to joke. I was I either have to work at like a giant company, or I have to learn how to like can tomatoes, because I didn't really understand like what was offered here, right? And so, you know, now I have a full understanding, and I want to show like you can start a career here. You don't have to work at the same place forever. You know, you can develop your career at different companies, and so that's really the artistic way of showing like there's upward mobility here.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Phil?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In your target demographics, there were 28 to 45s within a two-hour radius, which is good. But are you looking further into it? Are you looking at like blue collar versus white collar versus technical versus work from home and so on?
So, yes, we will, I mean, the imagery will sort of, we'll try to match that with the audience of where we live. But, you know, you make a good point. There are different kinds of jobs that we need to fill. And so, yes, we are sort of taking that into account, and the imagery will sort of depend on how we do that.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you so much, Julie.
All right, thank you. Do I need to close this, or?
You can close
Yeah.
it.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
All right, and that, moving along our regular agenda, we have a public hearing. I'd ask the clerk to please read the notice of the hearing.
A public hearing will be held before the Keene City Council relative to Ordinance O 2022-19A. The petitioner, the City of Keene Community Development Department, proposes to amend sections of Chapter 100, the Land Development Code of the City Code of Ordinances, to clarify language with the zoning regulations in Articles 9, 11, and 13 of the LDC, to amend Article 15, entitled Congregate Living and Social Services Conditional Use Permit, to add a new section entitled Conditional Use Permit Waiver, and to amend Section 25.4.3 of Article 25, Application Procedures, to modify the process for amending the sections of the LDC that are outside the zoning regulations. Per order of the mayor and councilors of the City of Keene, this 19th day of January, 2023.
Thank you, and I would recognize the applicant, Jesse Rounds, our Community Development Director, and Mary Berner, our Senior Planner.
Good evening. I'm gonna let Mary do the presentation, but we're happy to answer any questions and hear from the public as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Mary Brenner, Senior Planner. So I'm just going to give hopefully a high-level overview of the changes proposed in the ordinance and then leave it open for questions. So this ordinance is, we've been referring to it internally as sort of like a cleanup ordinance. So there's a number of different proposed amendments, and most of them are things that staff just identified. We kind of have a running list that we've been keeping of items that could use clarification within the code. So there are a number of proposed changes. Most of them, I think, are pretty, are kind of like housekeeping items. So the first proposed amendment is to Article 9, which deals with parking and driveways, specifically Section 9.3.2.2. This section has a required 3-foot setback from the side property line for all driveways. We're proposing to clarify that 3-foot setback would not be required for a common driveway. And the reason for that, we've always interpreted it that way, but the reason to just put that in the code and clarify is that in every case that you have a common driveway that serves more than one lot, there's going to be a point at which that common driveway actually crosses the property line in order to access both lots. So the common portion of the driveway would not be subject to that 3-foot setback. The second proposed change is to the Surface Water Protection Ordinance in Article 11, specifically Section 11.6.1.3. And this is to eliminate redundant language that has caused a little bit of confusion in the past. So currently this section states that the construction of new roads, driveways, in parentheses, excluding single and two-family driveways, and parentheses, and parking lots, are permitted with a conditional use permit. However, there's a separate section of the same article that says that single and two-family driveways are allowed without getting a permit, but then it has a list of 6 criteria that they have to meet, one of which is that the driveway serves to access uplands on a lot or lots of record that existed at the time that this overlay district was first adopted. So staff just feel it would be clearer to have it in one section and keep it in the section that has all of the details surrounding it, so that an applicant doesn't get confused when they're reading the other section and they, you know, the way it's written right now, you would assume that all driveways for a single and two-family home are exempt from having to get a conditional use permit. So that was, and feel free to, if it's okay, Mayor, for people to ask questions as I go along. If that's okay, all right. And then, so the next proposed amendment is to Article 13, which is the telecommunications overlay district, section 13.1.3.c. And so this would be to clarify that co-location and modification applications, which are defined in New Hampshire RSA 12K, would be exempt from the requirement to obtain a conditional use permit and major site plan review. Right now, we kind of tried to say that same thing, well, rather than just referring to RSA 12K, we tried to, in our own words, define what those terms mean in our code. And we think it would be much clearer and easier for everyone to understand if we just referred out to those definitions in the state RSA. And the reason for that is that an applicant who's coming to us to install a telecommunications facility is not your typical lay person. They're going to be a telecommunications firm that know what those terms mean. The next one is, that kind of goes along with this is section 13.2.5, which is the section on camouflage telecommunications facilities, and table 13-1. And this change would be to clarify that the installation of a brand new facility on an existing building or structure where there is no facility would require a conditional use permit and major site plan review. So right now, the way it's written, we kind of inadvertently created a loophole where somebody, if they're proposing to install you know, some antennas on top of an existing building where there's nothing there today, right now, if you did a strict reading of our ordinance, they would be exempt. So it's to kind of fix that loophole and make it clear that a conditional use permit and site plan review would be required, which is how it was before the LDC went into effect. So that's really the list of the sort of housekeeping items. We are also proposing to amend Article 15, which is the congregate living and social service conditional use permit section of the zoning ordinance. And this proposal is to add a new section entitled a conditional use permit waiver, and this would allow the planning board to grant a waiver from the review criteria in section 15.2 on a case-by-case basis. So currently, if an applicant comes before the planning board and there's one of those criteria that they need to meet, they can't quite meet it, or they're not able to fully meet it. And the example that I'll give is for screening of an outdoor area, because that's the issue that's come up a couple of times. If they wanted to get relief from that, they would have to go to the zoning board for a variance. And so this proposed change, the intention behind it was to allow the applicant to go through one board in one process rather than having to go to the zoning board and then come back to the planning board. I will note that there was a good amount of deliberation about that specific proposal at the public workshop, and I'll go into that in just a minute. So the next proposed amendment is this is the one proposed change that's outside of the zoning regulations, and it's to section 25.4.3 of the Land Development Code, which is the chapter or the article on application procedures. And this proposed amendment is to modify how the LDC is amended. So this would clarify that articles 19 through 28 of the Land Development Code, which are outside of the zoning regulations, would not need to go through the zoning ordinance amendment process. Today, the zoning regulations go through, and rightly so, go through a more robust public review process. They get introduced to city council, then they go to the joint planning board and PLD committee for a public workshop. That public workshop is noticed. Then they go back and there's a public hearing, and then they have to go to PLD and then back to city council. And that's, if everything goes smoothly, that would be the end of the process. And so we're proposing that everything that's outside of the zoning ordinance would just follow a regular ordinance process with city council, or for the planning board regulations, which are in Articles 19 and 20, and specific sections of Article 25, those would go to a public hearing before the planning board, and then go through the typical city council ordinance process. And then the HDC regulations would be the same thing, but with the HDC.
Congratulations, Mary. I think you found the deepest weeds that we can offer here at the
We
city
keep
of
looking.
Keene.
I know. There is one more. So the last proposed amendment was actually added during the public workshop on January 9th. And that is, this is with respect to the parking reduction section of Article 9. So we're going back into the zoning ordinance now. So right now, if there's an applicant who, for whatever reason, cannot meet the parking minimums required for their site, they can request up to a 10% reduction administratively. They have to demonstrate certain criteria. But if they want to reduce their parking requirement more than 10% but less than 50%, they can do so through a special exception request with the Zoning Board of Adjustment. As part of that request, they have to do a parking study that's prepared by a qualified professional, and they have to meet specific parking-related criteria. And then right now, the regulations also state that they have to meet the general special exception criteria in addition to the specific parking criteria. And so we have had one applicant go through this process, and I think it was late last year, and the zoning board really struggled to apply the general special exception criteria to a parking request because they're all use specific. Like if you look at the criteria, they all start with the use is, and it goes on. So the criteria are really geared towards a use and not parking, which is generally an accessory activity to the main use of the site. And so this was actually a change brought forward by the zoning administrator. And basically what we're proposing is to remove the requirement that they meet the general special exception criteria and just keep it to the parking specific criteria. That was it. And
We found deeper weeds.
sorry. So what's before you tonight is an A version because of the inclusion of that last amendment that I just described. There were no comments from the public during the workshop. However, as I mentioned, there was some deliberation from the two different boards. Again, it's the planning board and the PLD committee, specifically regarding the proposed amendment to Article 15. And basically, I think, I don't want to speak for anyone, but I think what I heard was that the main concern was allowing the planning board to grant a waiver from standards that were created through a very long and involved and robust public input process to create those standards. So there was a motion during the meeting to remove that proposed change to Article 15 from the ordinance, and there was a split vote on that. So I just wanted to mention that because there was a little bit more discussion around that one item. But at the conclusion of the workshop, the planning board voted to find the ordinance consistent with the master plan, and the PLD committee voted to request that the mayor set a public hearing.
And this will also be going to PLD, so they can do what they want. They could split the item up, or they could mess with it a little bit if they want, or a lot if they want. Any questions? Yes, Councilor Omrod, and then Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor Hansel. On the parking, does that apply to residences or just to businesses?
It applies to commercial properties, but we consider multifamily residential to be commercial. So single and two-family homes generally don't go, they do have parking requirements, but it's not quite the same as a commercial or multifamily property. It's really the commercial or multifamily properties that would most likely be going through that type of process.
And multifamily is 4 or more units?
Three or more, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may go into the weeds a little further, but I promise I'll tie it back. You got me thinking once again with Congregate Living and Social Services. A number of years ago, I asked that we rezone the 3 nodes, the commercial nodes that we have within the community, so that those uses are not allowed within that area, because just one of those uses could kill that node. It's not a good fit. So I guess what I'm looking for is recreate a new zone for those, specifically for those nodes, for their purpose. They do serve a great purpose. I mean, we have a city goal of being a walkable city, and they're part of that. And I would like to see a change that protects from those 2 uses in the nodes. Thank you. I know it has nothing to do with what you presented tonight. It was me way of getting my word out.
All right, other comments or questions from counselors? Counselor Madison?
Thank you, Your Honor. I haven't seen this many weeds pulled since Bobby's last invasive species pull. Just a quick question about the parking and the commercial land uses. Would that apply to short-term rentals like Airbnbs and other short-term rentals like that, or are we still not classifying those as anything?
That's a good question. My understanding is that though a short-term rental like an Airbnb is currently not regulated under our code, it's not necessarily regulated or recognized as its own specific use, and doesn't have an associated parking minimum with it. So the parking requirement would default back to whatever that property is classified as in terms of its use. So whether if it's like a single-family home that's being rented out as an Airbnb, their parking requirement would be whatever the requirement is for a single dwelling unit. If it's a 5-unit apartment building and one of the units is being rented out as an Airbnb, it would be, again, associated with the dwelling unit as if it were just a residence.
Further questions from the council? Okay, I'll open up the public portion of the hearing. Would anyone like to speak to this item tonight? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing except for written comments, which will be accepted until 1 p.m. next Tuesday, February 21st. Written comments must be signed and submitted to the city clerk by the date and time, by that date and time in order to be included in the record. Which brings us to confirmations, number 1.
This evening, we are confirming the mayor's nominations for 2 individuals. One is Kenneth Swimer. He has been recently appointed or nominated and confirmed as an alternate member to the Energy and Climate Committee. He's expressed an interest in becoming a regular member, and that's what this nomination from the mayor would do. And that is to complete an unexpired term that's in that slot, so December 31, 2023. The other nomination is for Ted Benson, who is interested in being a member of the Human Rights Committee. That is also an alternate slot, and it is also an unexpired term, which would end December 31, 2024.
And for these, I'm looking for a motion from Councilor Powers, a second by Councilor Bosley, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to confirm the nominations.
Second?
We have a motion from Councilor Powers, second by Councilor Bosley. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake,
Yes.
and Counselor Remy,
Yes.
and Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo,
Yes.
and Counselor Filio,
Yes.
and Counselor Williams,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Madison,
Yes.
and Counselor Ormerod,
Yes.
and Counselor Chadbourne.
Yes.
And Counselor Greenwald, Counselor Bosley,
Yes.
and Counselor Powers.
Yes.
And those are unanimously confirmed, which brings us to council committee reports, number 1.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to 2 donations dealing with the Transportation Heritage Trail. On a vote of 5-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to accept a donation of $40,000 from Pathways for Keene, Inc., and $12,000 from the Monadnock Conservancy, and that the money be allocated for the Transportation Heritage Trail Phase 1 project.
Council Powers for motion, Council Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second. We have motion from Council Powers, seconded by Council Remy. Council Powers.
As indicated in the introduction here, the Pathway for Keene and Monadnock Conservatory have brought forward some significant funds towards our trail system. The $52,000 will be used in the program that's unveiled in FY '25 for a piece of the trail between Eastern Avenue and Route 101. Both organizations have been very beneficial to us in the past in keeping our trail system as well-maintained and built the way it is, and this will continue to work towards it. There'll be some other grants and other opportunities for us to get funding for this, but it's the beginning of putting that FY '25 plan to paper. Unanimously recommended by the FOP, and we hope the council will do the same.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Yes, Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just can't pass up this moment. As a member of the Board of Directors of Pathways for Keene, we hit a couple milestones here. Number one, $40,000 is the largest check we've ever given to the city. And number two, this check has put us over $750,000 that we have donated to the city, not including the in-kind donations that we've done along the way. So this, I think this is very big, and I'm proud that it's coming to the city, and congratulations.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Number 2.
Finance Committee report, a second donation, that's one from the Rotary Club having to do with wayfinding signs for the trails and parks. On a vote of 5-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to accept a donation of up to $35,000 from the Keene Rotary Club, and that the money is allocated for wayfinding for the trails and parks.
Council Powers for motion, Councilor Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second. We have motion from Councilor Powers, seconded by Councilor Remy. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have another opportunity to share in the greatness of this community. In honor of the Rotary Club's 100th anniversary, they were looking for a program, something that would be a name placer for them in the future. And working with the Parks and Rec Department, they came up with a project for wayfinding signs along the trail system within the city. And so they have donated $35,000 for this project, and as soon as the money comes in and the program gets put together, that'll get going here as the springtime comes for our trail system. Just another example of how well we do in this community. Finance Committee recommended unanimously that this be accepted. I hope the council will do the same.
Thank you. Any discussion? Yes, Councilor Jones.
Speaking for the Pathways for Keene again, I just want to say thank you, because that's something we had on our future agenda, and now we can move on to something else. So thank you.
Great. Further discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? All those in favor? Opposed? That is unanimous. Number 3.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to the acceptance of federal forfeiture monies. On a vote of 5-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to accept federal forfeiture monies in the amount of $13,396.97.
Council Powers for motion, Councilor Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second. We have motion from Councilor Powers, seconded by Councilor Remy. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Finance Committee was joined by Captain Tenney of the Police Department, and he indicates that the 2 cases that bring these funds forward from the federal government were cases that occurred here in the city of Keene. One of them dates back to 2015, but they were all have been resolved and adjudicated. And so the amount of, total amount of $13,396.97 will be forwarded to the city of Keene once accepted by the city council. Finance voted unanimously to accept and recommends that the city council do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Further, any discussion? Counselor Williams?
Thank you. During the FOP discussion, there was a member of the public who came forward raising concerns about this money that's coming as a result of drug forfeiture from the war on drugs. I share this gentleman's concern. This is not ordinary money that we get as a donation. There's a lot of pain behind this money, and I think it's important that we recognize that. I would like to see this money, see if there's a way that we could designate this money for the purpose of harm reduction so that it could help to heal some of the damage that drugs and the war on drugs have caused. I can think of a number of possible ways to use the money. I know we have an opioid settlement account that hopefully there will be some money arriving at some point, and we're going to have to decide what to do with. Perhaps the money could go there. A couple weeks ago, Councilor Madison was talking about a need to do something about sharps and needles and to have some kind of city program to dispose of those safely. That's another way we could potentially spend this money. But I think we need to have a discussion about what can we do with this money. And so I would like to send this back to committee to have that discussion. So I hereby move that this be sent back to the FOB committee for further discussion.
Is there a second? A motion from Counselor Williams.
Second.
There's a second. Motion from Counselor Williams, seconded by Counselor Giacomo. Any discussion on referring this matter back to FOP committee, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? All those in favor?
Clarifying the motion, we'll go back, right?
Refer back to FOP committee. In favor? 6. Opposed? 6 in favor, 7 opposed. The motion fails.
Well.
Back to the main motion to adopt the committee report. Any further discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? All those in favor? Opposed? 1 opposed. Number 4.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report relative to an acceptance of a local source water protection grant. On a vote of 5-0, the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee recommends the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to accept, execute, and expend a local source water protection grant from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services in the amount of $14,200 to perform a property survey around the West Street well field.
Councilor Powers for a motion, Councilor Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second. We have a motion from Councilor Powers, seconded by Councilor Remy. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. Finance was joined with folks from the Public Works Department. Indicated that the state of New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services is going to award us $14,200 to perform some property surveys around the West Street well field. And if you remember, it's on the far end of West Street over by the Country Club. And there's a lot of different activity there than when we first started a well in that particular area. So they'd like to test the area and make sure we don't have any contaminants or there isn't anything that's affecting or may possibly in the future affect the well site, and we may have to make adjustments. So this money will allow us to get out there, make those kinds of surveys, come up with a report, and let us know if we need to do anything further. So the Finance Committee unanimously voted to accept this and hopes the county will, the council will do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? All those in favor? Opposed? That is unanimous. Number 5.
We have an informational report from the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee relative to a potential charter amendment dealing with the municipal primary.
And before filing this as informational, I want to alert the council that the city clerk's going to be preparing a memo that she'll be sending out to the city council and it'll be on the next city council agenda. And this is in respect to the advice she's received from the Secretary of State, some sort of housekeeping and related things to our primary and all that. So keep an eye out for that, and if you have any questions, certainly reach out to Patty. Councilor Filio.
Yeah, this is in response to the letter that I wrote. I have no problem with it being accepted as informational at this point. It is something we need to look at every year, and of course, as the city clerk and the city attorney pointed out to us, you know, it's like nailing Jello to a wall because what's coming out of Concord changes daily. So, you know, I understand the accepted as informational. I do want to applaud the city clerk and the city attorney for the time they put into this. They put a lot of hours into this, and it's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, we will accept that as informational. City manager.
Thank you. Just a couple of updates for you this evening. The next MSFI meeting, I'm looking at Councilor Greenwald, will include an informational presentation about infrastructure planning and the capital planning process. Public Works will provide information about how we calculate the cost of infrastructure projects and how they are planned for in the city's capital plan to avoid spikes in the tax rate. We've gotten some questions about that. I had a conversation with Councilor Greenwald and thought this might be a helpful conversation. The capital plan, as you know, is used to budget for infrastructure investments over time so that we can minimize spikes in the city's tax rate from larger projects and equipment purchases. Public Works will use examples from the downtown project. It would be great if councilors are available to attend, but if not, to watch it remotely. The only other update I have for you this evening is about Senate Bill 110. Last week, Natalie Darcy, our Human Services Director, and I went to Concord to testify in support of Senate Bill 110. Senate Bill 110 was put forward on our behalf by Senator Fenton. We had supporting testimony, was also provided by the New Hampshire Welfare Administrations, and then we did some work with NHMA, New Hampshire Legal Assistance, and our city attorney after the hearing to address wording concerns brought up by the chair of the Senate committee. That's all good because we all came to agreement. This bill would make clear that individuals receiving temporary housing assistance at a motel, hotel, shelter, or a stay in the jail or hospital doesn't change their residency or relieve the community from which the individual came for paying for assistance for that individual. So this is really an amendment to the welfare law in the state of New Hampshire. And if another community like Keene is in fact paying for their resident, they are responsible to reimburse that community. So hopefully this continues to make its way through the process, and it'll be something that we talk more about at the legislative session on March 1st, assuming the bill is still alive. And that's it.
Great, thank you. And that's a big deal, not because, I think it goes beyond just giving the city the ability to maybe recoup some funds. I think that's kind of not the reason that we're really doing it. It's really to make sure that these surrounding communities are forced to come to the table to recognize the issue that many cities are dealing with, and the fact that we have this spike in people that are without traditional homes. So hopefully we can bring them to the table, because when we get that universal recognition from the majority of people in the state and communities in the state, I think then we can really talk about solving the problem. But thank you for doing that. Brings us to city officer reports, number 1.
And we do have a report from the Finance Director, Treasurer Mary Howe. It is relative to a donation that the city has received.
Council Powers for a motion, Councilor Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Move to carry out the intent of the committee report.
Second. We have a motion from Councilor Powers, seconded by Councilor Remy. Councilor Powers?
Thank you, Your Honor. You know, we changed our rules so that all of our various donations didn't come in every other week or sections like that, so it's now channeled through the Finance Department. And this one, the Human Rights Committee has collaborated with Monadnock DEIB Coalition to show a movie at the Colonial. And that'll be February 15th and 16th It's a true story about the story of Mamie Till Mobley in the relentless pursuit of justice for her 14-year-old son. So it's well worthwhile. It's very nice to know that others are willing to step up and cover some of these expenses so we can all participate in part of our responsibility as elected officials. So a thank you goes out to those folks.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? All those in favor? Opposed? That is unanimous. Which brings us to ordinances for a second reading, number 1.
Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee report relative to Ordinance O 2023-03. They are recommending the adoption of the ordinance, and we have Ordinance O 2023-03, an ordinance relating to personnel systems and procedures.
And I'm looking at Council Powers for a motion. Council Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to adopt ordinance 2023-03 with an effective date upon adoption for section 62-501 dealing with family and medical leave, and an effective date of 7/1/2023 for section 62-611 insurances.
Second.
We have a motion from Council Powers, seconded by Council Remy. Council Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. Human Resources Department came to see us with these two changes to the city code as they relate to employees. The first one is to change the amount of taxable income the city is willing to pay to an employee who elects not to use the city's insurance, health insurances. You must have insurance. You can't come in and say, I'm not gonna take insurance and I wanna get this, this fee. Up until, well, I guess it's about the last 10 years, we've been going at an amount of $1,500. And this changes it to $3,500 to any city employee who elects to go on an alternate plan that the city doesn't have to pay for. Why do we do this? Because it really reduces our costs, because as you know, our health insurance costs are pretty significant, and particularly if you've got a whole family. So this really reduces our cost substantially, so the $3,500, while it is an expense, it's not a huge expense compared to what the normal fees would be. And the second part of this change is that we'll change the percentage of part-time employees' wages that they would contribute if they individually elect to take some of the coverages we have available. It makes it 7% from 9% previously. Finance Committee reviewed this and unanimously recommended that this ordinance be changed. Hope the City Council will do the same. Thank you.
City Manager?
I'll just add a little bit more, not to get too far into the weeds, but the other part of this ordinance change is related to FMLA, so Family Medical Leave Act. And it is related to leave for the purpose of birth, placement, or bonding of a child. And right now, under the city code, we have what's required under the FMLA for the minimum amount. It basically says that you must take that leave continuously, so the 12 weeks altogether continuously. This change allows for what's called reduced or intermittent leave for a period of time, which means sometimes what happens, parents are sharing in the daycare responsibilities in the first few weeks of the birth of a child. And so this provides a bit more flexibility for those individuals. And we do have families who are interested in utilizing this.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? All, roll call.
Counselor Lake.
Yes.
Counselor Remy.
Yes.
Counselor Johnson.
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo.
Yes.
Counselor Filio.
Yes.
Counselor Williams.
Yes.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Madison.
Yes.
Counselor Omerod.
Yes.
Counselor Chadbourne.
Yes.
Counselor Greenwald.
Yes.
And Counselor Bosley.
Yes.
And Counselor Powers.
Yes.
And that's unanimously adopted. Which brings us to resolutions, number 1.
Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee report relative to Resolution R 2023-07. The committee is recommending the adoption of the resolution. And the resolution is R 2023-07, a resolution relating to the acceptance and appropriation of unanticipated revenue.
Counselor Powers for a motion, Counselor Remy for a second, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Move to adopt Resolution 2023-07.
Second.
We have a motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Counselor Powers.
Thank you, Your Honor. City Engineer Don Lucier and his gentleman came forward and told us about a $724,612 award we're getting from the state. And it's for our bridge work. The next Department of Transportation construction or reconstruction that we're going to be involved in is the George Street Bridge. And, you know, it was designed a few years back. It's scheduled for this FY24. So it's anticipated that the costs there are going to increase based on just the cost of doing business. So we're looking to have approval of a part of this award that we got, $175,000, be earmarked for the George Street Bridge project. And a little bit after that, because of storm damage in 2021, we also have a Sullivan Road Bridge, very small bridge, almost you might call it a culvert, but when it gets rebuilt, it'll be a bridge. And this will be work that will be done with FEMA with a 25-75 split, but there's still a need for city's money. And again, it was estimated last year and the year before, so by the time we get around to doing it, that's gonna go up again. So they're looking to appropriate $125,000 of this grant towards that particular project, which means there's a balance of $424,612, and the staff is recommending that this be appropriated into the Bridge Capital Reserve account for future bridge repairs and improvements. FOP voted unanimously to recommend that this be adopted. I hope you do the same.
Any discussion? Yes, Counselor Remy.
Just one fun fact that was that they highlighted that we have the second most bridges in the state of New Hampshire, behind New Hampshire DOT, in the city of Keene. I just thought that was an interesting fact.
Any further discussion or interesting facts for us tonight? Counselor Ormerod.
What the heck? Is it too late to get the bridges on our logo?
We can get the logo on our bridges.
Okay,
All right. Further discussion? Seeing none, this does require a 2/3 majority and a roll call vote. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Lake?
Yes.
Counselor Remy?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Giacomo?
Yes.
Counselor Filia?
Yes.
Counselor Williams?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Madison?
Yes.
Counselor Ormerod?
yes.
Counselor Chadbourne?
Yes.
And Counselor Greenwald?
Yep.
Counselor Bosley?
Yes.
And Counselor Powers?
Yes.
And that's unanimous. Number 2.
Finance Organization and Personnel Committee report. This is about 2 separate resolutions. They're recommending the adoption of both. We'll start off with Resolution R 2023-08, a resolution relating to the optional veterans tax credit.
Counselor Powers, I'm looking to you for a motion, and Counselor Remy for a second, please.
We're gonna make this a little bit complicated, but we're not gonna get in the weeds. I would move to adopt Resolution R, or Resolution 2023-08, and repeal ordinance, Resolution 2018-06.
Second.
Okay.
We have a motion from Counselor Powers, seconded by Counselor Remy. Counselor Powers.
So we're adopting a revised ordinance, a part of our rules, but we need to take the other one off the books, and we kind of forgot to talk about that last week. So that's why I've added this to it. So, city assessor was here with us and explained to us that our changes for these 2 particular areas are a result of some state law changes. It means that we need to change ours to be consistent. And then secondly, if we don't, we just follow the general rule that's going on with the state law, the amount of credit that would be available to veterans would go down instead of staying where it is. So what we're asking council to do is to change the language so it's consistent with the state law and leave our credits that are available to those who qualify at $300. So we're going to adopt the first one. Excuse me, too many papers here. Which is really called the optional veterans tax credit. That's the first one we're going to do tonight.
Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? We'll, all those in favor? Opposed? That is unanimous. And that brings us to the second resolution. Council Powers for a motion, Council Remy for a second, please.
And just for the record, Resolution R 2023-09, a resolution relating to the veterans tax credit.
I move to adopt Resolution 2023-09 and to repeal Resolution 2021-27.
Second.
We have a motion from Council Powers, seconded by Council Remy. Council Powers.
So once again, we're doing this for the same reason, because of change in state law, and we want to make the credit that's available to veterans. The veterans, this one is the veterans tax credit, $300. Ask that you approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? All those in favor? Opposed? That is unanimous. So that brings to an end our regular agenda. However, we have an adjournment for collective bargaining strategy. And I want to thank everybody in the room and watching at home for your time and attention. We stand adjourned.